Welcome to Talking Tactics, a podcast that gets you results. Each episode features a single tactic implemented with limited resources that moved the needle in enrollment in some way. I'm your host, Day Kibbles, Strategy Director at Ology, a marketing and branding agency for education. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the most clever folks in admissions and enrollment marketing, doing the work day to day, just like you. Talking Tactics is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites, linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com. Hello, listener friends, and welcome back to Talking Tactics. I am Day, your host, and I'm excited to have Melody Ferguson with me today. Melody is here to talk to us about how Pacific Lutheran University's automatic admission partnership program, so I might just say AAP.
We do.
Moving
That's
forward.
fine.
Yes. Since they implemented this program, they've seen positive enrollment growth, but more than that, I'm going to tell you two of my favorite stats. 60.7% of the current incoming class that was admitted through AAP is first generation, and 63.2% are students of color. It's an incredible tactic for access and diversity. Can't wait to dig in. Melody is the Dean of Admissions at PLU in Tacoma, Washington. And as a first-generation college graduate herself, she's always been passionate about creating opportunities for access to education. Welcome to Talking Tactics, Melody.
Thanks for having me.
So here's the thing for anyone listening. How do I find guests? I troll the internet for all the big higher ed conferences and who's speaking, and the talks that stand out to me. I'm like, I must talk to them. They must come on the show. And that's what happened with you, right? You just spoke at RNL as of today when we're recording this.
Yeah, I did.
And that's amazing. Congratulations. But also more congratulations to all the people who are getting to learn from you at this point. So let's talk about this incredible, successful AAP program. Can you take us back to when it all began? What were you trying to solve? What was the situation?
Yeah, it was as I was reflecting on this program, we are now enrolling our fourth class this fall.
Wow.
Which is exciting. And yeah, looking back, I was like, how did this start? How did we get this off the ground? And it was 2021. So everyone, I don't even have to paint the picture, spring of 2021 in higher education, especially in the Pacific Northwest, students weren't going to school 5 days a week. They were going maybe on an AV schedule. Just connecting with young people was so hard. And the state of Washington was kind of talking about what could we do as a state to try to increase post-secondary attainment. And they called together a Zoom meeting with all the VPs and deans from like public schools, private schools, and said, here's what the state of Idaho is doing, for example. They have kind of a direct admission partnership. This is what a couple other states are thinking about. Would anyone be interested in trying this? And it's February or March. I can't quite remember. And I think a lot of us left like, we don't have the capacity. We don't have the time. And I kind of left that meeting. I thought, that's interesting, right? We already have a free application. We're already tests optional. We know who our students are. We're really honest about the students that we're trying to recruit. So I came back and talked to our president, our dean of enrollment management. And I was like, okay, so this idea was presented. I think we can try it. And you're like, are they going to tell me no way? But I think everyone knew we needed to try something. And I have a president who loves innovation, is really okay with us trying things. And maybe they go well, maybe they didn't, but at least we tried. So I'm also in a very supportive environment for kind of innovation. And so we did. So we launched this in spring of 2021, but it really came from this how do we connect with students? How do we make this process easier for students in 2021? And kind of went through that process. So that was the moment.
That was the moment. And you know what? Never waste a good crisis. That's good advice for everyone. I mean, most innovation happens from really tough moments, but I love that you said one of the things that you were considering is making things easier for applicants at that point. Obviously, that was a really tough year for a lot of high school students, but in general, it always is. So this isn't a tactic that only works because everything is different. This is a tactic that can always work. And I want to share just a couple of stats about this that I keep referring to all the time. The first is from Niche, 2023 Senior Enrollment Survey. They found that 57% of seniors don't apply to college because of the complicated admission process. That's over half.
It's so many. It scares me to even think about.
It scares me. Like, think about the ones we don't even, no, we don't even know. They never show up, right? And then RNL in 2024, they put out a high school student college planning report, and they shared that 72% of prospects think applying to college is difficult. So like this idea that it's hard is not going away, which is why I love this automatic admission program, because it really does remove that barrier that a lot of students just believe is a hurdle they're not going to overcome. So
yeah, I think a lot about what's in the news, what's out there is a lot of those, like maybe 15% of colleges who automatic admission isn't right for, right? They're fine. They're getting more applications than they need. They have wait lists. It is hard to get in there. But there are like 80%, probably more, of colleges across the United States that are a lot more access oriented than people think. But I just think young people hear about how hard it is to get into some of these big name schools and maybe forget that it's a little bit easier than they think it is, which puts the impetus on us to figure out how to communicate how we want them. And by saying the application is easier is one way to say, we want you at our university.
Yeah, here's this barrier. Yeah. We're removing it for you. So, okay, you've said we've been saying automatic admission. You've also said direct admission. So I would love for you to define for our listeners, those who are not super familiar with what that is. What was the idea then? What is automatic or direct admission, and what was your version of that?
Yeah, I don't think direct admission is kind of a one-size-fits-all process. So I also think for anyone listening, when I explain can easily be shifted or changed to meet who your students are. And now there's like a ton of companies out there that can also help you do this. But you're going to find there's some similarities and some differences across those programs. For us, automatic admission, what's nice about doing it in 2021 is it was a pilot. We kind of did it on the fly, but the high school counselors at a local district ended up being really key partners in building our program. So one of the things I would definitely say is if you're choosing to partner with districts, which we'll talk about in a second, include them in your planning. So they helped us name it. They helped us create it. They gave us very clear feedback. And so for us, automatic admission is a district to PLU partnership. So that's why we use the word partnership. We have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, a data share agreement with districts. This isn't what year 1 looked like, but what year 2, 3, and 4 looked like.
After some learning.
Yeah, we had to learn. And what we do is we say, of your seniors, anyone for us, it's a 3.3 or higher GPA. There's a couple other kind of caveats to make sure they're on a more traditional kind of graduation schedule and have met a certain level of math. We're going to just offer them admission. They don't have to do an application. They don't have to pay a fee. They don't have to write an essay. They don't have to get a letter of recommendation. We would just like to say, congratulations, you're admitted to PLU. And so for us, that's really kind of the basics. Now there's a lot of like little details in there, but they then send us a list of their seniors who meet those criteria so that we can officially make those offers.
I mean, how much simpler could it be?
Yes.
I love it. It's like, I love this idea. And I think about if they had applied with those criteria, they would have gotten
Correct.
in. So like, why make them apply? Right. So
yeah. And I think that's the point. Sometimes, I'll get questions from other colleges and I'm like, this is where it really makes sense to think about who are your students you're already admitting. They're probably getting in no matter what. So the risk is actually pretty low, even though it sounds like it's pretty high. For us, these students were getting admitted to PLU 98% of the time. So for us, it was kind of worth that 2% risk to make it as easy as possible.
Oh, yeah, totally. And the population that you're reaching are those 57% of students who are not applying because they're scared of it. So love it. Okay, so you hinted at some of the steps and the details of the implementation. So if someone listening is like, all right, you know what, I've always wanted to do this, I just don't know how to start.
Yeah.
What steps did you all go through to stand this up in the way that it's working for you now, 4 years later?
So we always start with an email from our president to their superintendent. So we've decided to go kind of top down, at least in the initial stages, because generally you're going to be working, as we found, with a district partner who's helping set up that data, get everyone on board, coordinate some of the communication from a district perspective. And he kind of CCs me on that email. And then I quickly follow up with and kind of, don't make it his responsibility and say, I'd love to connect with you if you want to meet. Otherwise, here's some materials. So we've built, an MOU that we send them, a DSA that we send them. And we've also created kind of a one-page program overview that gives them kind of high-level information and tries to really paint a picture of that. We promise once we get this up and running, it's really not a lot of work for your office, your staff. We're going to take on a lot of the responsibility. So that's sort of how we start. And then it's usually finding the right people within the district who can help us. For a lot of districts, it's very new to send data to a college. And so sometimes it's helping them through that process of what do we want, how they might look at it. And ultimately, then they send it through a secure SFTP that we've set up so that it's a secure data transfer to PLU. That can take 3 weeks. That can take 6 months for a district. So I also just want to say, it's not quick and easy necessarily for every district.
So, okay, I'm imagining this now pretty technically. Yeah. Do you send like a format that you need the files in? They need to have these columns, and he said that's what really takes the work. Yeah. It's getting the data in the right way, getting them to export it, putting it in the format you need, sending it. What are the kind of resource considerations on your technical side of things in your admission office? Did you have to do any change to the student system? Was there anything like that someone might need to also consider?
Yeah, great question. We use Slate as our CRM. So for campuses, they sometimes want to know that. I do think this can be done in any CRM, but that's the one we use. So it's generally just myself and our kind of data-oriented Slate captain who are the ones helping districts identify the information, receiving the files, checking them. Sometimes we have to go back and forth a little bit because they misunderstood something before we load them in and feel comfortable that data is as clean as possible. But no, we didn't have to make really any changes. The couple things we had to do were just make sure we were ready to load that into the system. So create, tags and ways to identify these students within our system. And then we also had to create what we call an acceptance form. So, we did want to make sure that the students weren't having to do the application, and we didn't want to call anything an application, but we did have to find a way for a student to respond to our automatic admission offer.
So you called it an acceptance form. Does that mean it's like their actual I accept this offer form, or is it more I accept that you accepted me form? Talk to me. I
think probably students think of it in both ways. But what it is we've guaranteed to the district, one of the things districts were concerned about, and I think this is interesting to find out, and this is why you need to have high school counselors kind of in your communication strategy. They didn't want us to treat these students like we treat all of our kind of inquiries or prospective students, meaning inundate them with emails and mail. I have a high school senior, and the amount of mail and email he's getting is a lot. So I understood, or didn't maybe as well then, but now do. So we've guaranteed, we are going to only send, we have a 3 email strategy and 2 pieces of kind of snail mail. So we have, we've kind of given them we're going to keep them in their own pocket. We're going to communicate with them their own way. But once they tell us they're interested, they become just like any other applicant to PLU. So we don't put them like in our traditional funnel, the admission funnel, as people talk about, until they fill out this acceptance form to say they're interested. I think for some students, it's, oh, this is really exciting. I've admitted to PLU. I want to be admitted. Some people are like, I just want to learn more at that stage. But then we get to treat them like an applicant at that point. And so we then get to communicate with them more, invite them to campus, do all the things we would do with an applicant. So that's kind of how we count it. But the acceptance form does make them an official applicant to PLU. And then we do communicate that doesn't mean it's committing them to PLU. It's just saying, I'm interested in learning more to see if you're a good academic, social, and financial fit.
Right. So it's kind of like treating them as an admitted student, right? So if they raise their hand, they say, cool, then you start yield, basically.
Correct.
So their nurturing starts at the yield stage instead of this kind of earlier inquiry stage.
So it's a little bit more of a sprint, but
oh my God, yeah.
But these students weren't necessarily interested before, right? So again, not high risk, worth it.
Yeah. So, okay, this made me think of timing then, because so when do you issue decisions? Like when do these data transfers happen to give students enough time to actually research PLU and make a decision?
Yeah, whenever the district's willing to do it. But which just means all year. We received our last data transfer, I think this year, and this is our 4th year, in March. So we had a district kind of launch, as we say it, in March. So, but some do it as early as September or October. So it varied. We are a rolling admission campus. So that does make it easier because that doesn't change our strategy in any way. This is one of those areas that, depending on the school, they may put deadlines and parameters around when a school district would have to send things. We just have chosen to kind of work with each district individually, especially in their first year or two as they're getting used to this.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense because, I can totally making a big decision like this with just 2 months notice. And I'm sure that the districts and the schools are really protecting the interests of their students. So think about timeline, that matters.
Yeah.
So, okay, what in those communications, in those 3 emails that you send to the students, what's in that? How do you position this to the student themselves?
Yeah, I think we're still getting better at that as we move forward, right? Every year we kind of change our language a little bit, change the timing. But we think what really matters is we tell them, yes, this is a surprise. So we're kind of upfront about this is coming out of nowhere, right?
Empathy, good empathy. Love it.
Like, we are not pretending that you're like, what? Is this real? Right? So we try to address that right away. We tell them that this is in partnership with their school district and their high school, so that they also know that if they don't trust this letter, they can maybe go back into their high school counselor and say, is this real? So we say that. We do give them a scholarship. So we are a private institution. So we do a lot of merit scholarships. So we have agreed to give them kind of an upfront merit scholarship based on what we know about them through this data share. Again, it's kind of what they would have received anyway had they applied. We're just giving it to them prior to admission versus post admission. So they're kind of getting it a little bit earlier. And for us as a private school, students think not only they can't get in,
right, but that it's so expensive,
but they can't afford it. Yeah. And obviously this is very focused on our home state. We are a regional institution, so we're primarily Washingtonian. We really work well with them to make it not only access oriented through admission, but also through financial aid and scholarships and affordability. And so giving them that scholarship up front, I think allows them to think that it might work, right?
Of course. That's another barrier removed.
Yeah. And, if you look at any of the same research studies I think you mentioned earlier, they're all going to talk to you about how cost is another one of those big hurdles and factors. So we're not only trying to think about ease of application, we're also trying to think about affordability very early.
Well, yeah, and actually being able to make this happen, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, so I was imagining when you were talking about issuing essentially all these offers of admission with scholarships, right? Like that, an instant gut of any enrollment manager would be, oh my God, what happens if they all accept? Do we actually have all those funds? Could we actually fit them in? So what have been some of the challenges you've had to overcome? I'm sure there's some estimations, some guessing. I'm sure some things haven't worked very well and you've iterated. Can you name just the top challenges for folks to be able to prevent now that you learned?
Yeah, so far that hasn't happened. So I just like to tell people, give it a try. We have scaled slowly. So our first year was 1 pilot school district. Our second year was 11 school districts. Our third year was about 26. And this year we're at 41. So we've scaled slowly our partnerships because we wanted to see app volume, yield. How do automatic admission students differ from our general applicant pool? And so it's allowed us to make better kind of behavioral scoring as a part of this. We also know that we're primarily within 30-mile radius of campus. So we know we're going to yield higher within 30 miles, but we've gone statewide. So we've prioritized school districts outside of our backyard who are in education deserts in Washington. So places where there aren't any 4-year colleges in their backyard. We've prioritized really small rural school districts because those are places we have a hard time getting to, but maybe this is a way to encourage them to consider PLU or just college in general. So, we've prioritized some smaller districts where we know yield is going to be lower. So we've definitely scaled this a little slowly, built it as we went to try to get a sense of what we do. What we've learned is we actually yield automatic admission students better than we yield overall applicants, which is, I don't think, going to be the case everywhere. I think it just works because of our location and where the population is. So we've learned that. And so we're able to kind of take that as we go. We also know kind of what our capacity is and what our enrollment goals are. So far that hasn't happened, but I would say we didn't go all statewide our first year.
Yeah. Protect yourself, get some data. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So you've said you're yielding better. Yeah. So that makes me curious about results. Talk to us about everything you've learned, some of these stats I shared earlier too, and then any others you have to kind of show that this is really effective.
When we went into it, it was really about two things. It was really about PLU needed more enrollment in 2021 because it was really hard to get students to choose to go to college that year. And the state of Washington needed some of us to work on post-secondary attainment. So I've always said that this program is successful, not just if they come to PLU, but if that student who gets the letter maybe just thinks they can go to college, right? That to me is exciting. So that's been a success. Even just hearing, we've had students call us and say, thanks for the offer. This is really exciting, but I think I'm going to apply to this other school. Great. That is exciting. They're just excited to get the offer. So that's one way we've tracked success. Kind of the things we weren't sort of going into this with, but have been nice, we definitely have seen, like you mentioned, both our first generation percentage of overall students grow and our student of color percentage grow. And we do think automatic admission has played a role in that because these students are about 10 percentage points higher than our overall incoming class in both of those areas. And then this year, it's about, I think it's going to end up being around 25 to 30% of our class will come in through automatic admission. So that is the way they have applied to PLU. So that's also kind of really exciting because it's not only eased the process for the student, I will tell you it's a lot easier of a process on our admission counselors, on our processing team, right? You're just moving a lot less documents.
And so this 25 to 30% of your class coming in this way, that's on top of what it would have been, right? It hasn't really cannibalized your other application sources.
No, it hasn't really. We've seen, kind of our Common App numbers have dipped a little bit, but not at the same rate as the growth in automatic admission. We think more just kind of the nature of kind of our ebbs and flows in that market and some ebbs and flows out of state. But no, it has not currently just replaced what would have been those applications. We can definitely say it's been additive.
It's growth. It's growth overall, which, for a lot of schools like yours, regional, private, this is what they all want. This is what we all want. So what other things have you heard from some of the folks who have been admitted this way? Do you have any stories to share?
This is one of my favorite things about this program because I do, as a first generation student from a city not very far from here, I didn't attend PLU, but it's been really fun to work for a place where I get to work with students like myself or students from my community. And although, yes, the students who would have gotten in, knew they were getting in, were already planning to apply, may have chosen to apply through automatic admission, that's great. It's those students who will verbally tell you the only reason they applied was because they got that offer, or they didn't think they were even going to college before they got that offer. And we were hoping for that. But to hear parents and to hear students tell me, my favorite story is I had a conversation with a mom at an event, and she was like, "Can you sit down? I need to tell you something." And when a parent says that to you at first, you think, "Oh no,
sit down." Yeah.
Like, you found the dean of admission and you want me to sit down. But she was talking about her son and how she had always seen him as a good student, but he wasn't that student who was winning awards at his school or on student leadership or being asked to do things. He was just a student who was going through high school, doing well. But because of that and seeing everyone around him kind of go to college the previous years, including an older sibling, he thought those are college kids, the ones who are getting awards, the ones who are the best in their class. I'm not a college kid. And so he had been telling his parents that. They were kind of upset about it, but they didn't know how to convince him otherwise. And they said literally this letter kind of landed on their table like a week later after they were talking about this. And they like celebrated. They like had a little celebration in the kitchen. Like mom cried, right? And this is extreme pain.
I'm gonna cry.
I know. She was like, finally, someone recognizes him as a student. Those were the words she used. And I, as a mom, like, oh my gosh, if I didn't feel like my young person was being recognized for the talents they bring, that would be really upsetting. And so that was a really moving moment for me. And they said it really just changed everything. They started talking about careers and jobs, and all of these things that he was kind of closed off to talking to. So although that's probably like the extreme nice case, we've had a number of mini moments like that through the 4 years that have really made all the work that this takes worth it.
I mean, if this isn't what we're all in it for, in admissions in higher ed, what else is it, honestly? What an incredible story to end the episode with. Thank you, Melody, for sharing this tactic with, the folks at the RNL conference and with me and all our listeners here at Enrollify. I really wanted to get this out there as much as possible because I think more schools should do this. And I just think that your attitude about it and the way that you have approached it is just such a model to follow. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So I know that after listening to this, people are going to want to reach out to you and maybe ask some questions. Where can they find you?
Just like you found me, as we go at the beginning of the episode. Now, LinkedIn has become a really easy way to reach out. You can message me there. It's easy to find everyone. I also am trying to like post some things about this too. I would say reach out. The other thing is we're not gatekeeping this in any way. So, even my president has been like, more schools should do this. So if you want to see something, if you want to sit down and have a conversation, I'm more than happy to do that.
That is so generous of you. Thank you. Please take her up on this, folks. And to all you, my beloved listeners, follow and subscribe to keep walking the walk and talking the tactics. The Talking Tactics podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions pros find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's bests as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Jenny Lee Fowler, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed too. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com.